Thank you very much.
And you just listened to a young girl who was saying that the Nigerian community here is totally very angry. It covers all the aspects of the various techniques of our development.
Was the Ijaw country of the Niger Delta of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He went to several schools. His major academic genesis was at the government college, Ujeli.
Go gather, destroy their food. With the camp and that other camp, don't compensate everybody.
In its key generation sometimes. Today our focus will be in the style of T.G. Clark, a poet and writer, and we shall also be very interested in his point Akmo dancing.
Some lives are meaningful, some are empty. There are lives that are meaningful, with too much meaning and riches to offer humankind. You know, after some of these earthly adventures and no more, one can still find footprints of these great lives on the pavements of our contemporary lives.
Good evening, you're welcome to the program Green Planet. Welcome to Fighting Poverty and Engaging Conservation Through Sounds 2010. It is part of the Conference on Sustainable Strategies and Practices for Development 2010 as well. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once more to the Conference on Sustainable Strategies and Practices for Development. I'm going to be presenting Can Edible Frogs Help? There are over 6,000 known amphibian species, including frogs and tadpoles. Many of these species are found worldwide and are native to areas like Europe and Africa. Known species are also widely used as pets and are eaten by many people in countries like France as frog legs and in many African countries, including Cameroon and Nigeria. There's also the Phenophylax esculentus, which is the fetal hybrid of the bullfrog and the marsh frog, hence the addition of the KL in the species name. These are some pictures of some edible frogs to give you an idea that they are eating and they are palatable if we decide to look at them in that light. They are not generally always nasty and yeah. Some edible African frogs. They include the African tiger frog, the most frequently eaten species. The edible bullfrog is a species of frog in the Ranidi, which is commonly found in Burkina Faso, Central African Republic, and Chad. There is also the hairy frog, which is widely eaten in Cameroon. Some edible African frogs include the largest frog. An adult can reach lengths of 1 foot from snout to butt. This species, as well as its slightly smaller cousin, the Conra robusta, are eaten in many places in southern and western Cameroon. You can see from the presentation that there has been some work covered by Lawson in 1993 and Yemani in 2005. The Fulbe of Mount Maninguba catch Cassina maculata in the grass surrounding the mountain's crater lakes. Some people in southwestern Cameroon have been reported to eat tadpoles of the genus Leptodactyl. So we go back to pictures of some edible African frog species in order that we can contextualize these frogs. You can see one guy holding the Goliath frog. The Goliath frog is sold averagely about $3,000 because it's used as pets in the western region. And Cameroon accepts the exportation of up to 300 of them every year. So Cameroon makes about $900,000 for this frog species, averagely. So you see somebody who has harvested the frog species down there, and it's something that if we strategize, probably, and to produce them en masse, it might be helpful for the meat shortages we are facing in Cameroon. White frogs can help poor and vulnerable peoples. Firstly, most poor people in Africa have limited access to proteins, vital to improve resilience to shocks and stresses imposed by diseases like HIV/AIDS, malaria, and so on. Farming frogs on a huge scale will supplement their deficiencies. Frog farming can create employment and can generate incomes to individuals and communities, especially as many advanced economies like France and China consume frogs as delicacies. Frogs are fast breeders and lay millions of eggs. Their reproductive biology permits them to be farmed in huge quantities. Worth noting is the fact that tadpoles have been said to be very palatable among some communities in southwestern Cameroon. Frog farming can divert dependence on threatened forest animals like apes in countries like Cameroon. This will better conservation and reduce drive towards palm monocultures or red oil. Most vulnerable countries in sub-Saharan Africa are heavily impacted by the negative incidences of climate change, like irregular rains, flash floods, droughts, low yields, and so on. They need alternative food productions to achieve food security. Frogs have medicinal value. They are used as traditional medicine in many African and Asian communities. Frogs can be sold as pets in many countries in the West. I just mentioned the Goliath frogs, which have been known to cost as much as US $3,000. Some statistics on frogs in Africa. According to Traffic, in Burkina Faso, almost all frogs collected were consumed locally, with the African tiger frog the most frequently eaten species. Frogs are usually sold to market traders who fry the specimens before sale. Villagers in the Ganzugu region also eat toads, which are first skinned, bearded, washed, then dried to avoid the toxic skin secretions. The reason to make this allusion is to try to have an idea how sometimes traditional taboos impact on our dietary preferences. Sometimes in places that have low access to proteins, just because of the fact that people think that certain things are probably untraditional. They don't feed on these animal species. I think a common example could be the lizards that fly our walls. They are really reproducing every day. I don't think enough research has been done on whether they are poisonous or they are edible as well. So I think it's a way of trying to intimate that we need to step up our understanding of the base of the natural resources we have around us. In Benin and Nigeria, frogs are transported to southwest of Nigeria for sale. 32 traders between them handled around 2.7 million frogs per year, most originating from the northern savanna regions of Nigeria and from neighboring Benin, Chad, and Niger. In Malanville, Benin, frogs are collected exclusively for the Nigerian market, which means probably we also supply Nigeria based on our geographic boundaries with Nigeria. There, many fishermen have recently switched to catching frogs, not because of higher profits, but because frogs can be sold in batches, providing a lump sum income of around US $20 per sack. Increasing numbers of collectors from Nigeria are visiting the area to collect frogs. And the authors of these statistics accompanied a 30-strong team who between them caught around 450,000 of frogs during a 2-month stay in Malanville. So then we move on to some statistics on the edible frogs. And what I've done is to show links that everyone here can access later on to understand how frogs are used and are eaten in other parts of the world. The first one is a link on Indonesia. The second one is a link on Madagascar. And on the fatty mineral composition and market value of frogs, you can access the third link So I think this aspect is really very important because we need to know that they have high nutritive value as well, in order that we can capitalize on them as a nutrition tool as well as a livelihood tool. Some issues, however, to consider. Firstly, like any other species, it will be vital to consider whether the rate of exploitation or the availability of particular species vary. Overexploitation may lead to extinction and the loss of livelihoods dependent on frog species for well-being. Moreover, farming frogs with high external inputs might lead to intoxication of farmers and families, mutate species, and affect water systems if farming is on natural ecosystems. Besides, keeping and selling frogs should be looked in a holistic way. Micro and macro socioeconomic considerations must be studied to establish frogs as a viable weapon for poverty alleviation and improving well-being among vulnerable communities. Conclusion. Edible frogs have a huge potential to be alternatives to inaccessible proteins among the vulnerable subpopulations. They are palatable and rich in vitamins. They have an increasing market value, which makes them a source of income for poor households affected by diseases like HIV/AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis, and so on. They are widely consumed in sub-Saharan Africa, which is embedded in poverty, hence can be a viable tool for food security in the region. So these are some references that can be useful. Herman has actually done a lot of work on frogs and in Africa. I think I should get back there. And also Lawson. And then I will be ending here. So thank you very much for giving me this.
Thank you, the director for ACCD, on that wonderful presentation.
Mr. Ivo, for the knowledgeable presentation. That was really great. When I see someone present something that has to do with food security, livelihood, sustenance, in fact, it makes me very happy. But I have these few worries, Mr. Ivo, if you could clarify us. You were talking about using frogs as food supplement, especially for people who are hit by HIV and stuff like that. I would like to know if your research, took some kind of consideration with the environment we live in here, here specifically here in Libe, and that will probably clarify people and provide them with the first-hand tool maybe to begin thinking in that line. Yeah, some people, it's always put that one's meat is another man's poison. You could cite all the things that are happening elsewhere, but when you don't relate to the people's environment and what they have available that they can use, it becomes really a big problem to me. Thank you very much.
Well, I think this presentation is based on the follow-up of some works I've done here. Between 2002 to present day, I've done a lot of interviews in the west coast of Limbe, for instance, in these coastal villages. And I know for sure that we have diminishing fish catch in these areas. And I've had a couple of interviews with experts, including Dr. Yabi and Dr. Chambing, who's going to be presenting here tomorrow. And we also talked about the possibilities of doing aquaculture recycling in order to step up protein dependencies here. And also, that's why Iraq has also established a shrimp farm presently that they cultivate larvae from Privi, and they try to propagate their own shrimps from Limbe in particular. I also did research on goats, the availability of goats and the scarcity of goats in around 15 to 20 villages around this area. And I can tell you that goats are really very scarce. I also interviewed butchers on research for the past 3 years, and I think the prices of meat are really very high. Some of these videos and multimedia are present online that are relevant to our particular context. So I think that without mincing words, we need an alternative means of supplementing our preferences to proteins. I think the rate of production of cattle and fish in its traditional formats cannot match the increasing demand, the rise of population, and also the threats that come from diseases that I mentioned. So I think contextually it's very relevant here. We have water holes that frogs can be farmed naturally, and we can also farm them artificially. And it is a possibility that we could look into and try to explore. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. Okay, the question from here this time.
The possibility of convincing, let's begin in our country, Cameroonians to like start eating frogs. Is it possible? How possible is that? Like you said, you've talked to a lot of people. When you were talking to these people, did they like tell you it's possible for them to eat frogs? Because when I start thinking of it, I don't remember ever hearing anybody in Cameroon talking about frogs. Yes, I have heard that some people eat tadpoles. That's as much, not frogs. Is it possible?
Once there is the resources put in place for such an operation, I think it becomes possible. Because you have a strategic goal, you have the inputs, and then you seek to achieve this goal. But let's forget about the academic aspect about it. But then, do you think it's also possible to convince people who don't eat crickets that they eat crickets in Cameroon? Do you think it's possible to convince them that they should eat termites? It's by extrapolation. Once you're not used to something, you can feel it's impossible. But then, if you were to buy meat for 2,500 and you earn just, let's say, 30,000 francs every month, if you can learn to propagate something at your backyard or in a farmer's synergy like frogs, that could help you to raise money for your family or raise you to having good food on the table, I think it's going to be a possibility. So, while understanding the fact that we have cultural taboos as to what we eat, some people even don't eat eel because it's from Manfi, or don't eat snails, and so on. But yet, it was a slow process, but we have still farmers in almost every part of Cameroon now. So we need to start, we instigate a process which you present here are pioneers of this idea, if at all it's a new idea, and you have organizations that you can actually propound on this idea so that it translates into the nooks and crevices of society. Then people will start learning to look at frogs not as some unwanted creatures, but as animals that can be eaten. I just showed you here how they can look. Maybe we should go back to the picture. Look at this. I mean, it's almost like chicken.
Yes.
It's almost like chicken.
Yes.
Yes, and what you might not know is that many times Chinese don't tell you the kind of meat they put in their meals. When you go to a Chinese restaurant, you just know you're eating a concoction of these and so on, and sometimes they don't even have a translation of the meal in English or French. They just have the picture of it. At the end of the day, you might be eating some things that you probably don't know. So, but I think it's going to take some time, but time is only time. It means when it gets to that time, will be possible for us to adapt strategies for the use of frogs in a wider range. Any other question?
I just had a reaction.
Really, a question is very nice. In the division, the whole of the division, people eat frogs, even part of Nigeria. Yes. The whole of Meme division, people eat frogs. And in Makosi, people eat frogs. When you stick it, it is like this big.
Yes.
Yes, I have eaten. I do eat. Most of it is indeed, if you people can proceed to produce, so many people will buy because the whole of women, I don't think there's and even sometimes when my people come from places like Bakudu, Koba, Tipenda, and so the highest thing they say, the dearest thing they send to me, if they cannot send me dry meat, they send me dry frogs. They are very, very good indeed. Good and sweet.
How do we know if this frog is edible or non-edible? Why is the frog good?
Some look the same, but they are poisonous. Those you can catch on the farms and so on. Some look the same, like the one in the water. But those on the land, the ones that are not living on water, in water, they are poisonous, some. So the better you eat the frogs from the river. And the tadpole, that is the tadpole we have in pools and so on, is the adult is the frog. Yeah, if you try to nest it, you will see it. Try and nest a tadpole. When you nest it, the adult of it is a frog. So the ones in the river are more edible than the ones on the land.
But generally the green frog, or what they call the European water frog, that has its cousins in Africa, are edible. And in terms of the frogs that are eaten here, there are some that when we were growing up, you probably may have seen, with long legs and so on, in little ponds and so on. I think they are eating, because my memory is not too cloudy about the fact that I know my parents too did say that frog is eaten in malnutrition as well. So I think, without really trying to state with authority about the fact that you can easily differentiate between edible and non-edible frogs, but I think if it becomes vulgarized, it becomes easy to know which one is good for eating, just like probably oranges and bananas and so on. Not all banana species are known here, but then there are some that you can look just for the way they look, or for the fact that people have been eating bananas for a while and know that probably you can eat them. So the issue is to launch a way of sensitizing people on the value of frogs, and then with time it's going to be vulgarized that people can recognize them on the market stands. But I think your question is very relevant, sir. Diversification of proteins is very necessary, as our basic proteins like red meat become increasingly very expensive. There is much talk about quails and how to expand on village poultry, and also the fact that Cameroon has put a ban on the importation of poultry-related products. It's a very welcomed idea because it helps to stem up domestic production of proteins in terms of the poultry sector. And we thought it was necessary to look at other avenues that could be exploited apart from poultry and quails, skin rats, and so on. Hence the reason why we decided to do a presentation on edible frogs, as we think there is a chunk of consumers within and outside Cameroon, and to better access to protein within Cameroon, and also to increase foreign earnings from the exportation of frogs, edible frogs, we thought it was necessary to vulgarize knowledge about the consumption within the country and also possible aspects that can be done in terms of improving on access to proteins with edible frogs. And remember that we have diminishing fish catch in Cameroon, and also with high prices of red meat, and also with many people that are very poor living in the country and do not have access to proteins. It is vital that we consider this option in the Conference on Sustainable Strategies and Practices for Development. Hence the reason why I did a presentation on can edible frogs help. Thank you, and I hope you did enjoy the presentation. Bye. And this has been Arrey Ivo for the African Center for Community and Development. I have been reporting on the Conference on Sustainable Strategies and Practices for Development and on the workshop Fighting Poverty and Engaging Conservation Through Sounds 2010.
In its key generation sometimes. Today our focus will be in the style of K.C. Clark, a poet and writer, and we shall also be very interested in his point Akmo dancing.
It's something that needs to be exploited.
Some lives are meaningful, some are empty. There are lives that are meaningful, with too much meaning and riches to offer humankind. You know, after some of these earthly adventures and no more, one can still find footprints of these great lives on the pavements of our contemporary lives.
Good evening, you're welcome to the program Green Planet.